There are quite a few things wrong with the current UI or GUI paradigm that we have today in computers. I mean, it makes kind of sense for computers, but the way I see it, there's quite a few issues with the way that it is presented. It worked well for the, let's say the paradigm or the analogy of an office when you're getting work done, when a computer is primarily something that you get work done when you sit at a desk, where you're in an office, when you're in a cubicle, things like that. The metaphor of the office, Windows, desktop folders, things like that, made sense back in the days when this GUI, when the whole metaphor was created, made sense then. I think we're coming to a point where that is kind of, that needs to change. We're moving into a world that's not just spatial, not just using augmented reality, and not just using AI, but also how we work, where we work, and even the fundamental question of like, what is work? And what does that mean to you? And why when someone asks you, what do you do, is the answer, and also what they're kind of alluding to, and why you end up answering and discussing your career or your job. I mean, that whole question we're going to put to the side of like, what is work and what work will we become? What will work become when we get to a world of automation or abundance? That's another question for another time. But the way that we work, the concept or even the method, I don't think is going to stay at a desk to get work done. We could talk about like master and slave kind of concept where the computer should be serving us, but a lot of the time it feels like we're kind of serving the computer. We make sure that the computer is well fed, right? It's next to an outlet and there's battery. The computer is static, it's sitting at a desk. You know, we bring our chairs, we make sure that we're height adjustable or we're standing, the computer's in a nice place. Very rarely people can actually work in like a beanbag, or even think of like something outside of the place, like walking down the street, where a lot of thoughts come in. Let's just put our focus on. A lot of thoughts happen. I saw a video the other day where someone was like talking about how like, it was like the 3 Bs. It was like bathtub, bed, bathtub, and there was one more. And the kind of, what he was saying is that a lot of our ideas, a lot of creative ideas come in those places where we're not specifically sitting down and trying to get into focus or try to get into flow. It's happening just out of a whim. And we are moving to a world where that kind of should really be the way that we work in, the world that we work in, where in a way, this obviously does not apply for everybody, but in a way, I'll talk about myself. I would like to get work done, not necessarily in specific blocks, although I love getting into a flow and be able to just cram and just be able to get things done. But a lot of my work, I find I have thoughts in the shower, you have concepts, you have ideas. Maybe that was, oh no, that was the bathtub, that was the B. Bed, bathtub, and this one more thing. For me, it would be like a hammock, or in the middle of a lake. But you have not just thoughts and ideas and being able to be creative, but things pop up at the weirdest times, and they're not just when you're sitting down at a computer. And a lot of the time when I come to the computer, I don't necessarily remember what I'm supposed to be writing down because I'm now in a completely different context. And just the idea of being able to just think aloud, or even or have someone or something that is able to collect those ideas and do something with them is quite interesting, that concept. Let's call it asynchronous work, work that just happens in the background. Kind of this idea that I want to come to my computer, and let's talk about this paradigm of computers, let's say today, but we're definitely talking about something in the future. And I kind of want that work to have already been done and be able to sit by it. And it's very easy to see that in the world now that we have LLMs, image generators, video, movie, things like that. To be able to come and see those kind of changes or things like that happening when I come to my computer. Now, there's a lot more concepts, things like that, but I want to just zero into this idea that I call LayerOS. It's something that I've talked about multiple times on the Brainstreams, but recently I wanted to like really dive into it and kind of create this design system. LayerOS is something that, for me, it is comprised of a bunch more concepts: infinite canvas, spatial worlds, this idea of having hierarchical UIs build out, generative UIs, custom UIs that are happening in the moment, conversational AI, and together with the conversational UI, kind of node-based working that happens like asynchronous working happening in the background when you come to it, being able to reference multiple parts, like multiple documents, things like that, and be able to create and generate things from them. There's a fundamental, so LayerOS is kind of comprised of all that. And just for those of you, I've been getting feedback, like some of these videos, they're like, I kind of go around in circles and things. Just know this is kind of how it works. The Brainstream is not a structured video that I've sat down and written a script about. Brainstream is about me working through a problem. So I might go around in circles, I might come back to certain things. Hopefully I'm not just repeating the same thing over and over again, but I'm adding to it. But I don't know that necessarily because this is not scripted. This is something that I'm just flowing through ideas that I'm thinking about. And also you might hear lots of videos that kind of touch on the same topics. And again, I hope it's not just a repetition. There's probably something that I've been thinking about and kind of iterating on. And also my brain is just trying to process it and trying to figure it out and get it done there. So this video, and I think there's going to be more videos because I'm kind of doing a project on the side for the next couple weeks. Trying to bring these things together, try to visualize and really dive into what is generative, what is not generative AI, what is LayerOS. And so I'm going to document it sometimes with Brainstreams. I'll be posting things up about like the journey a little bit. But it's mainly about, these Brainstreams will show you probably how my thinking has evolved and how I'm approaching it. I do aim to have, hopefully, a concept video out that showcases a bunch of areas that showcase this. I've spoken about it for a while. This is a kind of this is a combination of like years and years of thinking about multiple different concepts coming together. Also the 3 Ps, that's another concept over there, radical gesture. There's a bunch of things that are like from all my years of working in augmented reality in the spatial scene, using AIs, and more recently now being able to play around and think more about conversational UIs, you know, has really grown since I started working on them, it's 2015 or 2016 with Whisper. Obviously, LLMs are adapting and kind of being able to bring things out, and it kind of really is just, it's really solidifying the idea that that concept, what I saw back in the days of like this conversation or getting work done through a conversation, and having an AI that's always able to listen, but always able to also create things and do things. And when you look at some of these tools, you're starting to realize that what I was talking about then is not just like a dream or like, oh, that would be cool if it was magic. Like it's really getting done by multiple companies around there. So I really thought it was time to kind of bring all the ideas that were theoretical and build out like really the guidelines for this. I think not design, like a design system, like how this, like interface guidelines kind of how, like what LayerOS is and things like that. Very briefly, because we've only got 2 minutes left. The app paradigm that we live in nowadays is like Windows apps that are kind of like sandboxes. Sandboxed apps that each kind of exist in their own world. Now, there are ways of communicating, connecting. Sometimes we can export files. Sometimes we can import files. We can use APIs. Some apps specifically integrate with others because they have to. Either it's a necessity or they want to. They work well together. And they might export or might have made that integration a little bit easier. But when you look at Windows apps, and the thing I see constantly over the operating systems is that they pretty much share 80% of like the architecture, 80% of the idea is all there. Like the difference between like Sketch and Figma, like is minute. Like there's a lot that they share. Sometimes they use different names. Sometimes the way they approach it is a bit different. But like 80% of it is all, it's an infinite canvas where you can create UI designs based on layers, which interestingly enough is what the whole concept over here is, but applied to an operating system. How you group the layers, how they work together, how you prototype, how you actually get that into an exciting interface is they do that in kind of different ways, but 80% of it is a canvas that you can layer on different elements to build up that interface, whatever that may be, app, website, and beyond. And there's more than that. Like just one thing I'll finish off that you can think about, like when I write a document on a computer right now, I can start off in Notes because I'm jotting it down a little bit, but how does that go to then having to have Pages or Word or Google Docs? They're kind of the same app, but by different services. How does a note kind of then, how do I know when I started in Pages or Notes or things like that? When I'm starting with a tool, I'm kind of choosing that thing instead of it building up. So LayerOS is really an iterative design.